A model of syntax has been described where the constituents of a sentence stand in hierarchical relationships of containment that can be represented with a tree. These hierarchical structures are constructed by satisfying the lexical properties of lexical items. In this chapter, we will get surprising confirmation for these structures, as well as new tools to investigate constituent structures coming from some slightly more subtle facts about how sentences are interpreted. More specifically, we shall discuss anaphors and their core cases such as reflexive pronouns and reciprocals, how anaphors get bound to antecedents in English sentences, and pronouns and the basic principle B, a complication, in quantified antecedents. I'm Ortiz, and this is Binding and the Hierarchical Nature of Phrase Structure. First, we have to note that we want to refer to a particular person, the person named John. We sometimes use the DP John, but not always. We may also use a description that uniquely identifies him to our audience. For example, we might use a DP like the young boy who lives next door. We could refer to someone named John by using any of the several underlined expressions below. John came in, then John left. He took his umbrella. He hurt himself with it when he tried to open it, and the idiot can't even open an umbrella. From the sample sentences, we can refer to John by using the name John, a pronoun he, a reflexive himself, or even an epithet such as the idiot. We could also use the pronoun it to refer to John's umbrella. Thus, we can paraphrase the last three sentences in the following very awkward way. John took John's umbrella. John hurt John with John's umbrella when John tried to open John's umbrella. And John can't even open an umbrella. Because of this, reflexives or reciprocals and pronouns are called pronominal expressions, which stand for nominal expressions. Since we could use a name or a description to refer to a particular individual or an object, we may wonder why a language like English bothers to have pronouns at all. In general, we can use a pronoun or an epithet to refer to some person if there is some reasonable way to find out who this pronoun is referring to. For example, we have seen that if we have previously mentioned John, we can use a sentence with a pronoun he to refer to John. We can also use a pronoun in a sentence to refer to John if the DP John is used elsewhere in the same sentence, even if John has never been mentioned before, as in the following sentences. John said he was sick. The TA who graded him says that John did really well. We can indicate that we mean John and that he or him to refer to the same person by putting a subscript or index I on each of the phrases, which is interpreted as referring to an individual I. Accordingly, we would rewrite the two sentences above as John said he was sick. The TA who graded him says that John did really well. Certain combinations, however, seem impossible. For example, even if John has been mentioned previously in the discourse or made prominent in some other way, the following sentences A and B are impossible. Himself should decide soon. Mary wrote a letter to himself last year. In sentence A, we cannot use a reflexive pronoun himself as subject of the sentence, although it can refer to the person John. Also in sentence B, for there is a problem with gender agreement. However, sentences C and D are fine. He should decide soon. Mary wrote a letter to him last year. Similarly, in a case in which John has not been mentioned in previous discourse but is mentioned in the sentence, the following sentences are impossible. John hurt him. John says Mary likes himself. Herself likes Mary's mother. He heard that the idiot should win. He saw John. Let's now look at anaphors. Our languages contain this class of items. These are elements that have no independent reference, but depend on an antecedent for their interpretation. In English, The core cases of anaphoric elements are reflexive pronouns like myself, yourself, herself, himself, itself, ourselves, yourselves, and themselves, and reciprocals like each other. We begin with reflexives. How do reflexives differ from pronouns? The reflexives seem to minimally differ from pronouns in that they cannot be used in a sentence unless there is another co-referential DP in the same sentence. Let's examine these sentences. Mary likes herself. Our rabbit and the neighbor's cat like each other. The boys fought with each other. The reflexive herself in the first sentence refers to exactly the same thing as the subject Mary, and the reciprocal each other in sentences B and C indicates mutual reference in a group of some kind like the rabbit and the neighbor's cat and the boys. That is, the sentences roughly mean Mary likes Mary. Each of our rabbit and our neighbor's cat likes the other. Each of the boys fought with some of the other boys. Let's begin with some simple sentences with reflexive first. The first obvious point is illustrated by these examples. I saw John. Bill likes himself. I saw John. Himself laughs. The point is this one. A reflexive must be co-referential with another DP in the same sentence, its antecedent. Notice the use of the same index, J, in 10a, which indicates they're being co-referential. Hence, I saw John. Bill likes himself. Another basic point is illustrated by these examples. The boy likes himself. The boy likes herself. The boy likes themselves. The girls likes themselves. The girls likes herself. The girls likes yourselves. The point here is a reflexive must agree with its antecedent in person, number, and gender, not case. English reflexive anaphors are bimorphemic, which means they apparently consist of a pronoun plus self. The pronominal part of a reflexive anaphor must agree in person, number, and gender with its antecedent. The self part only agrees in number. Now we get to the tougher issues. Why aren't the following simple examples any good? Himself likes John. John's mother likes himself. They satisfy our requirements 11 and 14. Requirement 11 says a reflexive must be co-referential with another DP in the same sentence, its antecedent. Requirement 14 says a reflexive must agree with its antecedent in person, number, and gender, but not in case. We might explain 15 by assuming that the reflexive is not nominative case or that the antecedent must precede the reflexive, but neither of these ideas would account for 16. It turns out that a different unified account for these two cases is possible, one that we can find by comparing these structures in which the reflexive cannot find an antecedent with structures that are okay, like sentence 8a with structure 17. Now compare the tree for sentence 16. We notice that the reflexive can have DP's John's brother as its antecedent, but not the DP John. Sentence 16 is John's mother likes himself. It brings us to the idea expressed this way. Node X C commands node Y if a sister of X dominates Y, which can be stated in the following principle. The DP antecedent of a reflexive must C command the reflexive. In sentence 16, John's mother likes himself. The DP John in 16 with 318 is not a possible antecedent because it does not C command the reflexive. Requirement 20 also explains why sentence 15, himself likes John, is a deviant. In 15, there is no DP at all that C commands the reflexive. So now we have three special requirements associated with reflexives. Requirement 11 says a reflexive must be co-referential with another DP in the same sentence, its antecedent. Requirement 14, the reflexive must agree with its antecedent in person, number, and gender, but not in case. And requirement number 20, the DP antecedent of a reflexive must C command the reflexive. These explain the following idea. Sentence 21 says, John believes that Bill saw himself. Sentence 22, John believes that Bill saw himself. 21 is okay because the reflexive has the C commanding antecedent DP Bill, with which it agrees in person, number, and gender. 22, however, is a deviant because the indices indicate that we are trying to interpret the reflexive as having no antecedent in the sentence at all, and that is ruled out by requirement 14. There is, however, a third possible way of interpreting this sentence which we can make more transparent by including indices. John believes that Bill saw himself. This sentence is deviant. If we replace the reflexive by an A, the result is very awkward, but you can make sense of the result. Look at these sentences. John believes that Bill saw himself. John believes that Bill saw himself. John believes that Bill saw himself. Neither of our three conditions are violated in this last sentence. What then explains the deviance of example 26? Looking at a 3-in-1, we can see that the DP John is a possible antecedent in the same clause. C commands the reflexive, and they agree in person, number, and gender. A natural idea about 26, John believes that Bill saw himself, is that the antecedent John is too far away from the reflexive. There is a closer one available, namely the DP Bill. So maybe the antecedent and the reflexive have to be clause mates in the following sense. The reflexive and its antecedent must be in all the same TPs. In 26, John believes that Bill saw himself. We see that there are two TPs. One of them is the whole sentence, while the other is just Bill saw himself. Since John is not in the smaller TP but the reflexive is, they are not close enough together. 27 properly rules this example out. The antecedents we have considered so far have all been TP subjects of TP. Since DPs can occur in other positions too, it's important to consider whether our requirements properly handle everything. A DP can be the complement of a verb, the complement of a preposition, or the subject of a DP. Now, can any of these positions C command reflexives? The object of a verb does not C command the subject of the verb, but it can C command TPs in other complements. One construction that like this is one in which a complement DP is the antecedent of the object of a complement PP. It looks like we make the right prediction about these cases. Sentence 28, Mary revealed John to himself. Sentence 29, Mary revealed himself to John. And when we consider DP subjects, we get the following cases right. Mary's pictures of herself surprised Bill. I noticed John's excessive appreciation of himself. In 30, Mary's pictures of herself surprised Bill. The DP Mary does not C command Bill, but it does C command herself. Now let's compare 30 with this example. Mary's pictures of herself surprised Bill. Mary noticed John's excessive appreciation of himself. Mary noticed John's excessive appreciation of herself. Why is 32A so much worse than 30? When we hit a surprise like this, it's a good idea to consider the structure carefully. Notice that in this tree, both DPs Mary and John C command the reflexive, and they are all in the same TPs since there's only one TP, namely the whole sentence. But now it's tempting to treat this case in exactly the way that we handle the following. Mary noticed that John excessively appreciates herself. This sentence is already ruled out because the reflexive herself and the subject Mary are not in all the same TPs. But now we see that the TP John excessively appreciates herself is similar to the DP John's excessive appreciation of herself. We can capture this similarity with the following modification. The reflexive and its antecedent must be in all the same TPs and all the same TPs like in sentence 32. Mary noticed John's excessive appreciation of himself. The idea here is that a DP defines the same kind of local domain as a TP with a subject does. Reflexives must find their antecedents in these local domains. We may wonder why are TPs and TPs singled out in this fashion. One answer immediately suggests itself. Those are the two types of constituents which we have seen have subjects. It's plausible that it's the very fact they have a subject that makes them local domains. We could modify 34 to the reflexive and its antecedent must be in all the same XPs with subjects. The statements 34, the reflexive and its antecedent must be in all the same TPs and all the same DPs, and 35, the reflexive and its antecedent must be in all the same XPs with subjects, make different predictions. Suppose we have a DP without a subject which contains a reflexive. According to the first statement, the antecedent of this reflexive should nevertheless be found within this DP. Not so according to the second. The following sentences show that the second statement is better. John loved the new pictures of himself. I showed Mary several portraits of herself. Both of these sentences are fine with co-indexing indicated even though the reflexive is inside a bracketed DP without a subject. This shows that the presence of a subject is crucial, not the DP boundary itself. To review, we have suggested the reflexive have the following 4 special requirements. A reflexive must be co-referential with another DP in the same sentence, its antecedent. A reflexive must agree with its antecedent in person, number, and gender. The DP antecedent of a reflexive must C-command the reflexive. And D, the reflexive and its antecedent must be in all the same XPs which have a subject. The first of these requirements is semantic. It refers to how the reflexive is interpreted. The second is a general requirement imposed on co-referential DPs. It also applies to the relationship between a name or a description and a pronoun when they co-refer. The third and fourth requirements clearly involve the syntactic configurations of the reflexives, and these configurations restrict where reflexives can occur and provide independent confirmation of our syntactic theory. The first, third, and fourth requirements are usually grouped together and given the name of Principle A. Principle A says an anaphor needs an antecedent which is in all the same XPs with a subject as the anaphor. These 4 expressions and reflexives provide an account of our 4 examples 24 and 25, and it will turn out that we have set the stage for explaining similar examples with pronouns. We have also set the stage for explaining much more complex examples which we will see in subsequent chapters. Question 1. The reason behind Principle A was that the reflexive seemed too far away in examples like 26 and 33, so why can't we just say Principle A, the antecedent of an anaphor must be the nearest C-commanding DP in a sentence in terms of number of words. In question 2, the previous question makes you wonder if we can't replace both 37C and Principle A with this even simpler idea. The antecedent of an anaphor must be the nearest DP in a sentence in terms of number of words. In our examples 26 and 33, it does look like Principle A counts for the data. The antecedent of the reflexive does have to be the nearest DP. John believes that Bill saw himself. John believes that Bill saw himself. Mary noticed that John excessively appreciates herself. Mary noticed that John excessively appreciates himself. However, we can easily find examples in which the 2 principles make the wrong predictions. Consider this one. Mary appreciates only John and herself. Mary appreciates John and himself. Mary really appreciates and constantly praises herself, and Sue knows it. Mary really appreciates and constantly praises herself, and Sue knows it. Here, A and A both incorrectly predict that 40A should be bad. And consider these cases. The man who reads Shakespeare appreciates himself. The man who reads Shakespeare appreciates himself. The biographer of Elizabeth Bishop appreciates herself. The biographer of Elizabeth Bishop appreciates himself. Here, A and A have a different problem. The TP, the biographer of Elizabeth Bishop, and the TP Elizabeth Bishop both end at the same position. So they are the same distance from the reflexive in terms of number of words. In these cases, only one of the DPs is a possible antecedent, namely the C-commanding one, as our Principle A requires. Our proposals about reflexives also apply to reciprocals. There are some differences, but we set them aside for the moment. Reciprocals are also anaphors in English and thus subject to Principle A above and to the agreement requirement. The earlier example of a reciprocal is repeated below with its intended meaning spelled out underneath. Our rabbit and the neighbor's cat like each other. A rabbit and the neighbor's cat are such that X likes Y and Y likes X. Because it's plural, a reciprocal requires an antecedent that it's plural, and this antecedent must see command a reciprocal and must be close enough within all the same XPs with the subject, exactly like reflexives. John heard their criticism of each other. John heard their criticism of themselves. They heard John's criticism of each other. They heard John's criticism of themselves. John heard that they criticized each other. John heard that they criticized themselves. They heard that John criticized each other. We have not explored the internal structure of reflexive, and it's tricky, so let's treat them like pronouns and names. That is, they are DPs where we simply will leave aside the question of what the internal structure is. The previous section considers how anaphors, that is, reciprocals and reflexives, get bound to antecedents in English sentences, as in a simple example. John likes himself. The students' boys are proud of themselves. Antecedents of reflexives can be names like John, Mary, or descriptions like the students, a book. They can also be quantified DPs like the following, allowing us to express things that really cannot be expressed in any other way. Everyone likes himself. No spy betrayed himself. These sentences cannot be paraphrased the way we did for names or descriptions as in the succeeding A and B sentences. This would give a completely different meaning. Instead, we must convey the meaning of such sentences by using a different, more complex types of paraphrase as in C and D. Everyone likes everyone. No spy betrayed no spy. For every person X, X likes X. For no spy X, X betrayed X. The expressive capability which we see here in reflexives is very important and is found in some form in human languages. This is one reason why languages have reflexives and pronouns. For such cases like 47A and B, John heard that they criticize each other. John heard that they criticize themselves. It's a bit strange to talk about co-reference of referring to the same objects as between the reflexive and its antecedent. This is particularly clear in the case of the sentence no spy betrayed himself. What does the DP no spy refer to? It's a very interesting question how exactly the meaning of such expressions is computed. We would need to be precise about this to understand how exactly such DPs function as antecedents for a reflexive or a reciprocal or in fact a pronoun. But this is not a question we'll address here. We'll simply assume that the antecedent does its job of determining how the reflexive is interpreted without spelling it out in detail. This is why we modify our terminology. We'll say that an anaphor needs to be bound by an antecedent, by which we mean C commanded by its antecedent DP. We can now reformulate our findings. The most important conclusion to remember is that the way anaphors are associated with an antecedent depends on syntax. It's useful to introduce the following notions. A DP is bound just in case it's interpreted as co-referential with a C-commanding DP, and the domain of a DP is the part of the structure that's contained in all the same XPs with the subject, the smallest XP with the subject that contains the DP. Using these notions, we have the following requirements. An anaphor must agree with its antecedent in person, number, and gender, but not case. An anaphor must be bound in its domain. Principle A combines three requirements that were stated separately in the previous sections. An anaphor must have an antecedent, and the antecedent must be C-commanding, and the antecedent must be in the domain of the anaphor in the sense that it is in all the same XPs with a subject as the anaphor. The domain in which an anaphor must find its antecedent can be indicated in the tree. Consider again a few examples like the following. I heard John's criticism of himself. I heard John's criticism of myself. John heard that I criticized myself. I heard that John criticized myself. We can indicate the domain of a reflexive by putting a box around the nodes that are in the same XPs with the subject as the reflexives are. This is called the domain of the reflexive. It will always be the smallest XP with a subject that contains the reflexive. If we collect some of the examples considered in the previous section and change the reflexive pronouns to simple accusative pronouns, in most cases, the good sentences become bad and the bad ones become good. Let's look at these sentences. Mary likes herself. Mary likes her. Our rabbit and the neighbor's cat like each other. Our rabbit and the neighbor's cat like them. The boys fought with each other. The boys fought with them. The girls like themselves. The girls like them. John's mother likes himself. John's mother likes him. John believes that Bill saw him. John believes that Bill saw himself. John believes that Bill saw him. John believes that Bill saw himself. There is clearly a regularity here. Pronouns seem to be in nearly complementary distribution with reflexives. We can summarize this symmetric behavior by stating that if a relation between an anaphor and an antecedent is fine, replacing the reflexive by a pronoun with the same antecedent yields a deviant result. And vice versa, if a relation between an anaphor and an antecedent is deviant, replacing the reflexive by a pronoun with the same antecedent yields a fine result. Adopting this tentative approximation, we can account for the distribution of pronouns by requiring them to satisfy a condition opposite of that which anaphors need to satisfy. Principle B, a pronoun cannot be found in its domain. It cannot have a C-commanding antecedent in its domain. Principle A and Principle B taken together predict that pronouns and anaphors should be in complementary distribution. In truth, complementarity between pronouns and anaphors fail. One pair of examples illustrating this is the following. They like their books. They like each other's books. Both examples are fine. The domain of the DP pronoun their or the DP reciprocal each other is the same. It's the first XP with subject containing them, the direct object DP. Principle B correctly fails to rule out the first sentence, but Principle A predicts that the second sentence is ill-formed, since the antecedent of the reciprocal is the subject of the sentence and thus not in the domain of the anaphor. To correct this problem, we would have to make the domain of an anaphor slightly larger than what we have assumed. Here, we leave this as unresolved. Like anaphors, pronouns can be interpreted as bound in the sense that they take their referential value from some other DP in the same sentence. Like anaphors, pronouns can be interpreted as bound in the sense that they take the referential value from some other DP in the following sentence. We can express the resulting meaning in the two ways given below it. Mary thinks that she is smart. Mary thinks that Mary is smart. Mary is someone X such that X thinks X is smart. When the antecedent is a quantified expression, the first gives the wrong result, but the second is fine. Using a number sign to indicate the meaning that the sentence does not have, consider this data. Everyone thinks he is smart. Everyone thinks everyone is smart. For every person X, X thinks X is smart. Who in this class thinks he is smart? Who in this class thinks who in this class is smart? For which person X in this class is it the case that X thinks that X is smart? These special translations are needed when the antecedent of the pronoun is a quantified expression, that is, a DP with a T, such as no or every or each. These cases of something else that is special. Consider the following pairs. Bill's mother saw him. No one's mother saw him. The mayor of John's hometown wrote to him. The mayor of everyone's hometown wrote to him. I showed your description of John to him. I showed your description of every boy to him. The difference arises because of the following principle we'll not investigate here. If a pronoun has a quantified expression as antecedent, the pronoun must be C-commanded by this antecedent. One particular striking case of this requirement is given in the following two discourse fragments. John came in. He was wearing a hat. Nobody came in. He was wearing a hat. The second sentence of the second fragment has a quantified antecedent, nobody, which cannot command the pronoun. This is disallowed. In this video, we have discussed the core case of anaphoric elements in English, which are reflexive pronouns, and the four special requirements and reciprocals, including the principles A and B that govern pronouns in sentences. I'm Ortiz. Thank you for watching.